Jonathan Lemire officially deciding he's going to hang his American flag upside down because the Red Sox lost last night.
I did text that to you.
It was actually a neighbor that you have raised fan that you're doing it for. What?
Yeah, there are pictures taken. Yes, we will get to it later this morning. But the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, American flag at his home hung upside down, signal of distress, done in the days after January 6th. It was a symbol of the Stop the Steal movement. It was hung at the Justice's house. He blames his wife.
You know, Willie, blaming the wife thing for people in public eye in trouble, that's going around.
Don't ever do that.
You know, I'm scared of you. I would never do that. But, Willie, this circles back to these people, and I will say these people, these Trumpers, who have spent their entire life attacking people for being insufficiently patriotic, and then they lose. And they just hate America. They hate America. They're constantly going around saying how weak we are. They hate our military. They say how weak our military is when it's the strongest in the world. They hate our economy. They claim the president of the United States is a socialist. The Dow yesterday made all of these people a lot richer, breaking 40,000 for the first time, despite Donald Trump's lies that it would collapse if Joe Biden was president of the United States. They hate this country. They attack this country. The only time they love it is when their person is in office. And I just got to say, and we've got a lot of legal, brilliant minds around this table. Yeah. So they can speak to this later if they want to. I will tell you, growing up, one of my friends' fathers was a federal judge. I had no idea until I got older whether he was Republican or Democrat. And that was the case in Northwest Florida, a very conservative place. The federal judges kept themselves beyond reproach. They never talked politics, ever, in the privacy of their homes. If you ask them opinion, they would just say, not my job, right? I'm a judge. They actually took their oath seriously. And for a Supreme Court justice, and I will say my opinion only, but the guy most likely to have had something to do with the leaking of the Dobbs decision. Leaking it to the Wall Street Journal, or somebody connected to him leaking it to the Wall Street Journal because he wanted to keep Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett frozen in place. I think history will show that. But that aside, for a guy who is a Supreme Court justice that let that happen at his own home in one of the most fraught times in American history since the Civil War, it's just sad. And it shows how little respect he has for the institution. It shows how little respect he has for the law. It really does. It's disgusting. It's just disgusting.
Willie.
And by the way, we can't overstate the timing of this, which is January 17th, 2021. Think about where we were as a country, still completely shaken by what had happened on January 6th. And a sitting Supreme Court justice has a flag flying upside down at his home that is a symbol of solidarity, as John said, with the Stop the Steal movement. We should explain a little bit here. The New York Times is reporting that a photo of an American flag outside the home of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has now been made public. The flag flown upside down. As the Times notes, the inverted flag has become a symbol of Trump supporters who claim, again, without evidence, that the 2020 election was stolen. Reading from the piece now, quote, the upside-down flag was aloft on January 17th, 2021, the images showed. President Donald J. Trump's supporters, including some brandishing the same symbol, had rioted at the Capitol a little over a week before. Mr. Biden's inauguration was 3 days away. Alarmed neighbors snapped photographs, some of which were recently obtained by the New York Times. While the flag was up, the court was still contending with whether to hear a 2020 election case, with Justice Alito on the losing end of that decision. In coming weeks, the justices will rule on two climactic cases involving the storming of the Capitol on January 6, including whether Mr. Trump has immunity for his actions. Their decisions will shape how accountable he can be held for trying to overturn the last presidential election and his chances for re-election in the upcoming one. I had no involvement whatsoever in the flying of the flag, Justice Alito said in an emailed statement to the Times. It was briefly placed by Mrs. Alito in response to a neighbor's use of objectionable and personally insulting language on yard signs. Joe.
Wait. So you're going to hate on America because of something a neighbor did?
You're going to blame your wife?
Right. And blame your
make
wife?
Up that excuse?
What is this? What is this?
Blaming, my wife was mad at a neighbor.
Blaming wives. Anybody care to jump in here?
But I want to know what person, let alone woman, wife, would do that in response to a problem with a neighbor.
Eugene, a neighbor upsets me. Comes out, makes fun of me because the Rays beat the Red Sox last night. And the Red Sox really suck. Okay. And so I'm mad. Okay. I'm not going to hang my flag upside down. None of this. This is as dumb as what I heard about the Dobbs leak. Okay. Nobody believes him.
No, nobody believes him, and there's no reason to believe him. And he says briefly, that Times story had neighbors suggesting that briefly meant for a period of days. This flag was flying upside down at Justice Alito's house, and the idea that a yard sign that says something rude, and apparently it said something rude about President Trump, is enough for a Supreme Court justice who was supposed to be non-political, who's supposed to be, less political than Caesar's wife, would do this, and I'll just say do this, not allow his wife to go out and run up the flagpole, but would do this, and now, of course, as Alito always does, try to sort of brazen his way through it. I mean, I'll just say it. I have thought for a long time that Alito is the worst justice. He is one of the worst justices that we have seen on the Supreme Court since the days of Roger Taney and the other justices that enabled decades of Jim Crow. I mean, he's his opinions have always struck me as intellectually dishonest, clearly tailored to come out to a predetermined result. He's and now this. It's just stunning to me. Stunning.
And it's not just that it was a few days after January 6th. While that flag was flying upside down, the court was still contending as to whether or not to hear a 2020 election case. And let's also remember, of course, Ginny Thomas, the wife of Clarence Thomas, part of the same Stop the Steal movement. So now you have two justices potentially compromised on this issue as we head into another election that could very well end up before the court again.
Right, and Chuck, I really, ideology is irrelevant. Again, I've known progressive federal judges. I've known very conservative federal judges. They hold themselves beyond reproach. This is really, again, for the time, it's just unbelievable.
So something you said earlier, Joe, really resonated with me. You grew up in the Florida Panhandle, and a friend's father was a federal judge. Right. And you had no idea, none, what his politics were. So I spent my professional life in federal court around federal judges. I have never seen or heard anything that would suggest to me that ideology played a role in their decisions. Some of the judges were great, some were good, some were mediocre. So they got some stuff right, they got some stuff wrong, but I've never seen politics infect their work. And by the way, I can extend that a little bit further. It was true of the federal prosecutors with whom I worked. We never had a political discussion in 2 decades in our office. Ever. Same with the federal agents.
Chuck, I want you to underline that fact, because people have to understand that despite what they see from, I will just say this, from Justice Thomas and Justice Alito, people take their oaths seriously. Conservatives, moderates, progressives, they see themselves as officers of the court, and damn it, they held this country together after January the 6th.
And I have no doubt that among my colleagues were liberals, moderates, progressives, conservatives, all stripes. But we never discussed it. In fact, I remember once, Joe, walking through our office parking lot and seeing a bumper sticker on someone's car, which startled me because it was a political bumper sticker. I had never seen that ever before. It turned out that that particular federal prosecutor had borrowed his spouse's car because his was in the shop. And that was the only time I even saw a bumper sticker in our parking lot expressing a political view. It was so unusual that I noticed it.
Yeah.
I am beyond disturbed, Joe. You know, I was a law clerk to Justice Blackmun on the United States Supreme Court when this kind of behavior would have been unimaginable. You wouldn't have read about it in a book of fiction. And now this kind of conduct is taking down the Supreme Court. It's
nobody would have believed it if you'd put it in a book of fiction.
No one would have believed it. And Justice Alito should not sit on any of these cases involving Donald Trump. He ought to recuse himself. And here is the challenge to Chief Justice Roberts. The United States Supreme Court's credibility is plummeting.
All-time low.
Completely.
Lower than perhaps even the United States Congress, and that's saying something. Mm-hmm. And it is due to the Supreme Court's own self-inflicted wounds. Alito and Thomas directly involved in the January 6th insurrection. Now they're going to sit on cases involving pivotal legal questions. Absolutely unthinkable. And I think that Chief Justice Roberts has to take leadership of this court. He has to tell these two justices that they have no business sitting on the court. It will still be able to decide the cases, but not with Justices Alito and Thomas, because by virtue of flying that flag upside down, whether it was his wife or not, it's his home. And Justice Thomas, through his wife Ginny, being involved in helping to organize the insurrection, both have a very direct interest here.
Yeah, you know, Mike, I was talking before growing up in a very conservative area with federal judges who, sure, were very conservative. But I knew a few of them fairly well. You could not get them to talk about politics in the privacy of their own home. There was a line. They felt like they had a duty. They believed it was a sacred duty not to be involved in politics. And here you have a court run by Chief Justice John Roberts, an institutionalist, a man who I think may be one of the last institutionalists in the Supreme Court, but an institutionalist who has seen ethics problems come up regarding payments to justices, who's seen just the most disturbing politicalization through Ginny Thomas and now this. He's got to do something. He's got to make a statement. I believe the American court system separates us from other countries. It is usually the leveling wind, even if we disagree with some decisions from time to time. And yet things just keep getting worse. Their approval rating keeps getting lower. Soon, they're going to lose respect by the overwhelming majority of Americans. And then a tyrannical president can just run over them and just ignore their rulings like Andrew Jackson did.
Well, Joe, you served in the House of Representatives. Senator Blumenthal serves in the United States Senate. There is accountability in both bodies to a certain extent. There are some rogues. People get away with things. There's no doubt about that. But there's accountability. There is no accountability on the United States Supreme Court. None. And I think you're correct. I mean, Justice Roberts, people who know him, who I know, indicate that he's a solid guy, a responsible guy, and has his eye on his legacy. His legacy is going to be ruined by the behavior of people like Justice Alito and Susan Glasser. On the point of the Supreme Court having no accountability, on the point of the Supreme Court about to rule on presidential immunity, I mean, what impact do you think internally in Washington, among the collective powers, in the Senate, in the House, in the presidency, what is their view of the Supreme Court's function today and the Supreme Court's behavior today?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another story about lack of accountability in our institutions. It's part of the overall crisis of faith that Americans have in all of our political institutions right now. I think when you look at the questions surrounding Donald Trump for 8 years, many people looked at Trump's behavior, the fact that he was able to get away with so many things for so long, and saw an incredible lack of accountability. Well, he's in a courtroom right now. The question is, who polices the Supreme Court? I'm curious to hear from Senator Blumenthal whether there's any prospect of any legislation ever coming through that says that the Supreme Court needs to be more accountable. There's a real question whether the court even enforces its own rules. As that very important New York Times story points out, the Supreme Court actually warns its employees regularly against any displays that could be interpreted in a partisan manner, in a political manner. When the Times asked the court spokesperson, do these rules apply to the justices, they did not receive an answer. And to me, that speaks to an institution without any accountability. It's really an important piece of reporting, and it's very upsetting.
So, Senator, this comes at a moment where Americans' faith in the courts have really declined per polling, that the court is perceived as far more political than ever before. It comes at also a fraught moment for the nation. We're in an election year. One of the leading candidates is currently on trial. There's just sort of a sense of real unrest and tumult. And now we have this, where I think more and more Americans might feel like, well, this is, in fact, rigged. The gig is this is not going to be done, in a fair and done way with the Constitution in mind. How worried are you about where this nation's heading right now, as things are only going to grow tenser between now and November?
I couldn't be more worried. And here's the reason. It goes to Michael's point. The judicial system has no armies. It has no police force. Its orders are obeyed because of its credibility, because people trust it. And it has squandered that trust. The ones who have squandered it most irresponsibly are the highest court justices. And we've worked for a code of ethics, been rejected by Republicans. We've worked for an inspector general. My proposal is that the judicial branch have an inspector general, just like every other agency of government. The Supreme Court has no code of ethics uniquely among the branches of government. So I think it is a moment of reckoning for our democracy in a very real sense because of the trust that has been lost in our judiciary. And I think we have a bipartisan obligation. We ought to come together as Republicans and Democrats, because this issue is bigger than either party and any of us individually.
Well, and unfortunately, again, at a time when faith in the Supreme Court is so low, you look and you have a Supreme Court that is slow walking the January 6th case. The D.C. Circuit, I got to say, I'm rarely shocked by what comes out from the Supreme Court. Yeah. And I wasn't even shocked at Dobbs. It's like, wait, these people have said since they were in law school, they believe it's a state's issue. So don't be shocked when people have been saying. But I will tell you, I was shocked by the immunity decision. I thought the D.C. Circuit's extraordinary decision would be immediately affirmed.
Court wouldn't take the case.
Court wouldn't take the case. Court wouldn't take the case. So they're slow walking the January 6th case, the Supreme Court. You look what's happening with the stolen nuke secrets case, the stolen war plans case. You look at that. There's a judge in South Florida that was excoriated by the most conservative circuit court in America for being just biased. And the mistakes that she's making now regarding jury instructions, we won't even get into it. It is laughable. You would get an F in law school.
It's the judge they got.
But it's the judge they got. I get it. I'm just talking about, you add those two things, and it looks like people are doing things for Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. You look at what Thomas has been doing ethically. You look at what Ginny Thomas was doing regarding January 6th. Now you look at what Alito's doing with the flag hung upside down. And I will say it right after Dobbs. You had Amy Coney Barrett, who I will say, even though I disagree with her in a lot of things, I've respected her the best. Her going to a Federalist Society dinner and making light of opposition after Dobbs, making light of that. I'm telling you, this is, if people want to know, and I know the senator will be the same way. People who grew up around federal judges are seeing this behavior from the top justices in the land, and it's like they're from another planet. Right. Just like I don't recognize my party, I do not recognize this type of behavior from any federal judge.
I think, Joe, you and I have over the years talked about this, and, you used to be able to talk about Harry Blackmun, appointed by Richard Nixon, ends up authoring the opinion in Roe v. Wade. John Roberts, supposedly a conservative justice, if he was behaving like a partisan, surprises everybody, comes out and affirms the Affordable Care Act, keeps it on the books. That's the tradition that we had for a long time, which was not that the justices didn't have ideological predispositions, but that they routinely would do things that surprise people, so that you could never predict what would happen on a big historic case, because it turned out that a supposedly liberal justice ended up being conservative, or a conservative justice ended up being liberal.
By the way, John Roberts of the Affordable Care Act famously said, don't ask us to do it the court, but you can do it the ballot box next year.
And I think it's, we're at the end now of 25 years where with Bush v. Gore, and people were stunned that to see this court appearing to act in such a nakedly partisan way. And it has been 25 years of erosion, and erosion on the basis of these predictable outcomes on the basis of who you were appointed by. I think, all of these displays, the Ginny Thomas case, the go to the Federalist Society, the hanging of the flag upside down, you might be able to, in some world, dismiss all of it as symbolic outside the court action if it weren't for the fact, the thing you just said, which is the most crucial thing. There is nothing more important than the notion that a president who's been indicted for having been a participant in and having led an insurrection against the United States government, that case be heard before this election, so that the former president, Donald Trump, would have legal and political accountability, so voters would know whether this man was guilty of having committed a crime of that nature. And there is no conceivable world in which we are really going to say that, whether you're conservative or liberal, that the president of the United States is beyond the reach of the law, is immune from any prosecution for anything he does when he's in office. And yet, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a wholly predictable and partisan way, decided to basically say, as you said, slow walk, I would say, an outrageous decision not to seriously just pass on this case. Given what the appeals court had done, there was only one right answer, which was, there is no issue here. There is no issue here other than the partisan issue. And now they are going to almost certainly guarantee that we will not have a verdict in that case before voters go to the polls in November. It's a shocking, substantive outcome, not a symbolic thing. I mean, I'm not downplaying the hanging of the flag upside down. That's the leading indicator. That's what's reflective of is this total casting aside of any attempt or pretense of being nonpartisan. It is just, we are doing what our, in this case, conservative ideology tells us to do, and we're working for Donald Trump.
And it's really a moment of reckoning for the Chief Justice, because it is an unaccountable institution appointed for life, but the Chief Justice has an opportunity. He has an obligation to take action. Congress has an obligation to take action. There are remedies like a code of conduct and inspector general that can be imposed here, but it is really up to the Chief Justice most immediately to act.
This week, a bipartisan group of senators released a roadmap for combating misinformation stemming from artificial intelligence. It encourages AI creators to implement robust protections ahead of this year's election while still protecting First Amendment rights. And joining us now is NBC News correspondent and anchor for NBC News Now Daily, which is doing great, by the way. Love watching you guys. Who is new reporting on who might be most affected by AI-driven misinformation? And what did you learn? Because the answer scares me a lot. I've seen it in real time.
Right? It scares me too. And what's interesting is that the studies actually show it's not the baby boomers or even the millennials who are having trouble clocking misinformation, but Generation Z, all while nearly a third of adults under the age of 30 regularly get their news from TikTok. So, of course, we wondered, how does this generation actually distinguish between what's real and what's fake? And what does all of this mean for how they're going to vote this year? The answers we got, trust me, they were pretty surprising.
Misinformation is everywhere. From altered voices at a college football game,
I hereby resign from my position,
to AI-generated political announcements. But when it comes to actually spotting it, a recent survey found younger Americans performed worse than their older counterparts on a misinformation test designed by the University of Cambridge. With Generation Z, Americans between 18 and 29 scoring worse than any other age group. So what does that mean for this upcoming election?
And that's an amazing thing, but of course...
We sat down with a group of Gen Z journalism students here at Bucks County Community College to find out.
Okay, so about roughly half of you get your news from social media. What if I told you that studies have found that Gen Z is actually more susceptible to misinformation than older generations?
I would believe it.
You believe it?
Yeah.
It's no surprise because Gen Z basically grew up with tablets and iPhones. I mean, we're the Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter generation.
It's all on the same thing, you know, all on the same platforms, both real and fake news, and there's no really differentiating.
So we decided to put them to our own test.
So each of you has a card. One side has real, one side has fake.
Showing examples of fake news and real news found on the internet, some of which were created by AI. They spotted several of the fakes pretty easily, like this AI-generated image of Joe Biden in military fatigues.
The guy in the back, his face is like very distorted. It's very big. It just doesn't look natural.
Ready? Here we go. Fake. Okay. You guys spotted it.
But others were trickier.
Is this photo of the Bidens and the Carters real or fake? Well, the answer is real. This was actually taken by the White House. And what's fascinating about that, it was probably done on a wide-angle lens.
This AI-generated image of former President Donald Trump fooled half of the group.
This one is fake. This was an AI-generated image. It was shared by an ex-user.
Oh my God!
Oh well, and I actually can't make out the name in the hat. This was like an eyeball.
Yeah, that's another thing. AI tends to really mess up words.
It's a concern shared by both Congress and a new crop of nonprofit organizations aiming to detect AI-generated images ahead of the election, like the nonpartisan group TrueMedia.org.
My biggest concern is that when it gets to the fall, and even the 48 hours before the election, that we will be flooded with false images showing President Biden being rushed to the hospital, showing that there's an active shooter at an election site, and having all these things be false, but be credible.
But in the end, these students got a passing grade.
I honestly thought I would fail because it's just so easy to create AI images and AI headlines.
I think the most important part is to not see stuff like that and kind of move away from that being part of our info stream.
With one surprising result.
From doing this test, it almost feels like you all aren't so worried about thinking that fake things are real, but instead when you see real things, you're not actually sure if they aren't fake. Am I hearing that correctly? Does that sort of skepticism affect the way that you feel about voting at all?
It makes it a lot harder to think about voting because you have to do a lot of extra work to find out if the things you're seeing are real.
Does it make you say, why even engage?
Yeah, there's
in the
definitely
process?
times where I'll be thinking, why bother if I cannot tell any sort of difference between the two.
Between true and false?
Between true and false.
I'm heartbroken.
Between true and false. And what's interesting, Mika, is, we only focus on those who are Generation Z and voting age, but some new surveys are actually showing how this next generation of voters, those who are under 18, get their news. And among the findings, more than half of teenagers are getting their news from social media. And among those who get their news from YouTube, 60% say they are more likely to get it from celebrities and influencers rather than traditional news organizations.
The problem is that a lot of it, if the news was, if there was guidance and triple sourcing and but they don't do it.
And that's the thing. It's like, when I'm in the field and I'm talking to people, I want them to know, for example, at a news organization like this, there are so many layers of checks and balances and fact checking to make sure that what we bring you is accurate. Right?
NBC News correspondent and anchor for NBC News Now Daily, Morgan Radford. Great piece. Thank you very much.
As the use of artificial intelligence continues to grow in the classroom, educators are now split on the new technology's benefits. According to a new Pew Research survey, 25% of teachers in America think AI does more harm than good for the students. Our next guest, however, thinks AI is the future of education. Let's bring in right now the founder and CEO of the nonprofit educational organization Khan Academy, Sal Khan. He's the author of the new book, Brave New Words, How AI Will Revolutionize Education and Why That's a Good Thing. Sal, we just had a segment talking about the pitfalls of AI. Give us reason to hope that this really could lead to a more positive, brave new world.
Yeah, and the reality is everything you just showed in that last segment is real, no pun intended. But the reality is there are some positive things. And in education, obviously, when ChatGPT came out, everyone's like, oh, kids are going to cheat. And they are going to cheat, and they are cheating. But the reality is ChatGPT wasn't built for education. And so it was a very thin layer on top of these large language models. But as I write in the book, there are ways to use the same underlying technology to really support teachers and really support students. I started Khan Academy almost 20 years ago tutoring family. I used to be an analyst at a hedge fund, and I was tutoring family. Word spreads that free tutoring is going on. It became more family. And I started really trying to scale up what I was able to do in one-on-one tutoring. And I did it with videos, I did it with software, but you can only go so far with that. But then when we started to see what was possible in the last couple of years with some of these frontier AI models, it starts to get really close in certain ways to what I was able to do with my cousins. And so our goal is, hey, that's a positive use case, and it can also support teachers, help them with lesson planning, help them write progress reports, even do a preliminary grade. A teacher should be in charge at the end of that. And then you can actually get some real net benefit out of it.
Well, what you've done with Khan Academy has really revolutionized and democratized education to some extent, because your education modules are accessible in most countries in the entire world. So how now does AI really impact the product that you're able to put out into the world? What's the most positive thing?
Yeah, so, our mission as a nonprofit is free, world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And I tell our team there's many ways that you could try to do that. You could lobby governments to spend more on education or things like that. Our vehicle has always been, hey, there's these scalable technologies that used appropriately could actually get more personalization if kids hopefully do have access to school. But if you're in parts of the world that don't have access to a school, or the schools don't have certain classes, we want to raise the floor there. And what AI does is, people say, oh, on-demand video is great, Sal, but what happens when a student wants to ask a question? Or now kids are cheating with AI. How do you solve that? Well, what if if the AI supported the student, but that AI is connected to the teacher? So that AI can report to the teacher what they did with the student, and they can tell the teacher the entire process. And so when you take these technologies and you put them on something, they're not free because it's very computationally intensive, but it's going to get pretty close to free. So I think it's going to make these things that can be world-class a lot more accessible.
So, Salman, how does AI help a 5-year-old learn to read?
Yeah, and we haven't gotten there yet. We have an app, Khan Academy Kids. It's free. Everything I'm talking about is funded with philanthropy. But we can imagine in the next couple of years, you will see apps that a child could sound out words with. It could ask the child to write out a letter, and it will be able to recognize that letter. A child will be able to play games in the real world. Hey, why don't you build this with blocks? And the app will say, great job. Now, I don't think that's a replacement for humans in their life. Ideally, even Khan Academy Kids, we say that's best when a parent, a sibling, a grandparent is sitting next to their child and doing it together. And even then, it should maybe be for 20, 30 minutes a day max. But that's where we're going.
Is AI at all in competition with the in-class teacher?
I don't think so. The way we frame it, we have already tens of thousands of students and teachers. This coming school year, it's going to be hundreds of thousands. We're partnering with hundreds of school districts around the country and actually now around the world. And the first thing we tell teachers, think of, how much time do you spend writing lesson plans, grading papers, writing progress reports? It's usually 10, 15 hours a week doing that type of task. I said, imagine if your school district just discovered all sorts of resources and they could hire teaching assistants for every one of you to do those types of things. And they could provide more personalized support for your students, but report back to you. And also hold your students accountable if they try to cheat or try to cut some corners. And every teacher's like, yes, sign me up for that.
Thank you so much for being with us. The new book is titled Brave New Words, How AI is Going to Revolutionize Education, and why that's a good thing. It's on sale now, and just rave reviews. Bill Gates calls it a masterclass for anyone interested in the future of education. Adam Grant says the same thing. Walter Isaacson, Sam Altman, Laurene Powell Jobs, on and on and on. Tony Blair, all saying, if you want to know about the future of education, read this book. It's on sale. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Michigan will be a key state in this year's presidential election, and recent polling continues to show a close race. Young black men have emerged as a key voting bloc that could either push Joe Biden across the finish line or help give Trump the best black voter support for a Republican presidential candidate in recent history. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Tremaine Lee, who sat down with a group of black men who are deeply involved in their community to see how they are feeling this election cycle. Also with us is the president of the National Action Network and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton. Great to have you both with us.
Tremaine, the Rev has been telling us for some time that Joe Biden's support among black voters not as intense as it usually is for Democratic voters, but for Democratic presidents, but especially among black men. What did you find?
President Joe Biden won Michigan by a little more than 125,000 votes in 2024, in 2020. In 2024, it's expected to be just as close. But there's a demographic of voter that could play a crucial role in who wins the state and perhaps the White House. Black men. I caught up with a group of guys in Detroit who say if politicians want their vote, they're going to have to come and work for it. Check it out.
What's up, sister?
On Detroit's hardscrabble west side, it seems like everyone knows them.
That's your bike now?
From block to block and business to business. This group of black men shows up day after day, rain or shine, offering protection, resources, and respect.
Every day, y'all out here filling the gaps. Yeah, man, that's where our people at, so we gotta be here.
They are New Era Detroit, an organization that fills the often massive void between the people and the politicians.
People come in, and, they come holler at us about things that they may need, or, if they struggling with their water bill, light bill, gas bill.
They're everyday faces in some of Detroit's most disinvested communities, a kind of hood first response team. But they feel invisible to those at the height of political power.
We are one of the leading organizers on the ground in the city of Detroit. Literally, the closest that you're going to get to black people in this city. We haven't heard anything from a Democrat or a Republican.
Men like them, in communities like theirs, could very well determine who is sent to the White House in 2024, with both Democrats and Republicans vying for their attention.
I got indicted a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. And a lot of people said that that's why the black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against.
Black men have not benefited proportionate to other populations in terms of economic opportunity and economic health, much less wealth creation. And so we just have to be honest about that.
And while Biden has locked down traditional black voters, black men are poised to become something of a swing vote. Some polling showing that Trump is on track to capture a larger share of black voters than any other Republican presidential candidate since 1996. Why do you think it's been harder for them to connect to us?
They just want to get the votes. And that's it. They don't care about nothing else.
People come to our communities and pander for our votes, and we know we ain't never seen this person before, ever. We know it's fake.
In recent months, Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and third-party candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. have all made trips to Michigan without visiting the kinds of neighborhoods that New Era works in.
You got to think, man, we live in communities where people, worrying about their next meal, where people worrying about, if they're going to be able to keep the lights on. We never seen these people. You know what I mean? They're not real people, and then when they come to, you just said, they come to Michigan and they come to these places, but it's not in our places.
Who among you is definitely going to vote? Raise your hand if you're definitely voting in this election. So just one. So you haven't decided whether you're going to vote or not?
I'm undecided as of right now. Me and my family, we're Democrats.
I don't know who I'm going to vote for.
You know, none of us speak for all black men, but I wonder if the candidates were listening. You know, what would you tell them that black men especially want for our communities?
Just want to see you, touch you. Just want to feel your vibe.
If you really want the black vote, spend more time in the black community with black people, hearing about their problems.
Back on the streets, the brothers of New Era are doing what they do best and what they say most politicians can't or won't do, showing up for black people in a way they can feel.
What's up, bro?
So as you saw, just one of those guys, the elder gentleman, definitely is going to vote in the presidential election, and for Biden, actually. But tracking with a generational divide we're seeing among black men and their support and their openness to Donald Trump, we're seeing something that shifts along certainly class lines, gender lines, but also generational lines as well.
Tremaine, that is, I mean, it's such an extraordinarily important report. And Rev, again, this is something you've been talking about for some time, that black men are going to be so key in Michigan, especially, as Jonathan was bringing up before, because a lot of Arab Americans may not be there in the numbers that they have in the past supporting Joe Biden. But we always talk about white men, how are white men going to vote? They're the swing voters, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the case this year. A lot of older white men are starting to move to Joe Biden. It is now black men that the Biden-Harris team have to really connect with.
Absolutely correct. And I believe that they can. I just don't know why they don't get the message. I think Tremaine's piece is so important because one of the things that was said by one of the men on the piece that I know for a fact is the disconnect between those politicians, black and white, and people on the ground. I remember, and Tremaine remembers this, when I started Politics Nation here, some people in Harlem said, well, he won't be doing the Saturday morning rallies anymore. I still do. I'll be there in the morning.
Right.
Because you want to be on the ground where the people are. You can't speak for people you don't speak to. And the one thing that I say, Tremaine, I'll pose it to you, the Biden people have so much that they could, in many ways, that was an amen. Somebody
that was an amen, exactly.
But the Biden people have so much material they can work with. It's almost like, to me, some kind of a malfeasance on their part, or malfunction in the campaign. Because if I were running against Donald Trump and I wanted to talk to black men, I'd bring out the Central Park Five, who Donald Trump called on getting the death penalty, and they were exonerated, and he still said he didn't back up off of that. These are young black men that could say, this is what he thinks of us. He tried to kill me. They're at my rallies every Saturday morning. Nobody from the Biden campaign even refers to, you want to know about Donald Trump and young black men? Look at the Central Park Five, the only race case he ever took a position on in 40 years in New York. He never said anything about any other case.
And Rev, to your point, you're there every single Saturday with the people. When Kamala Harris came, she went to the African American Museum, the creme de la creme of Black Detroit. On Sunday, Joe Biden will be at the NAACP's national fundraising dinner there, the creme de la creme, but not as Brother Zeke said, in the hoods or ghettos.
Or church.
Going to the people or going to a church with older, consistent voters. But they're leaving a lot of votes on the table because these men in this community have concerns about their family. They have concerns about safety. They have concerns about how they're engaging with the policing and carceral system. But they never see any of these politicians. And if they do, it's only once every 4 years or 2 or 6 years. Well, never on the ground.
At our National Action Network convention, some of the dignitaries spoke from the podium. One guy said, no, let's do a open up town hall where the people sit in a chair, talk to the people and all of that. Wasn't a Biden official. It was Deacon Joe Scarborough.
Well, it's Deacon Joe.
That was amazing. All right,
Tremaine, that's so important. Thank you so much for the report.
Amazing. I'm going to turn to politics now, and this, too, is disturbing. A House Oversight Committee hearing devolved into chaos last night during a markup to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress after the Attorney General refused to hand over the audio recordings of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur. NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander has the details.
I'd like to know chaos on Capitol Hill overnight. Order. A hearing about the Justice Department's handling of President Biden's special counsel interview devolving into personal attacks and shouting.
You're not.
Yeah, you're not.
You
don't have enough
intelligence. Chair recognizes Mr. Perry.
Okay, move to strike the.
I move to strike the lady's.
I move to strike the lady's words again.
The opening insult coming from far-right Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, attacking Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No, ain't nothing. Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Mr. Chairman, that's beneath even you to engage the order of your committee.
Order.
Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming to Crockett's defense.
That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?
Are your feelings hurt?
Her words down. Oh, girl, baby girl.
Oh, really?
Don't even play.
Crockett eventually hitting back.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
What now?
The contentious hearing was originally called as part of the GOP's push to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress after the Justice Department withheld audio recordings of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur. And earlier yesterday, President Biden asserted executive privilege to deny House Republicans the recordings. Garland had recommended that, warning the recordings' release would damage future law enforcement efforts. The special counsel who interviewed the president as part of an investigation into classified documents discovered at Mr. Biden's Delaware home and at an office space found the president did nothing legally wrong, but in his report referred to the president as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. The White House counsel, in a letter to House Republicans, saying they only want the recordings released to, quote, chop them up, distort them, and use them for partisan political purposes.
That's Peter Alexander with that report. We have absolutely nothing to add. I mean, it just speaks for itself. It's so disgusting. It's so sad. I was not in Congress during the era of good feelings. We had impeachments. We had government shutdowns. We had Newt Gingrich against Bill Clinton. But I will tell you, even during the worst of times, even in the middle of impeachments, Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich would get on the phone and they would talk about things that were going on in the world. In one particular instance, while the impeachment was going on, they talked on the phone about Iraq and the dangers presented by Saddam Hussein. And I saw time and time again John Kasich being called terrible things and still sitting down patiently talking to members on the other side. Democrats doing the same thing. And so I just, it is unfortunate. And if you want to know what you can do to make a difference, you can figure out how to stop gerrymandering in your state. Because these people come, somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene has nothing to worry about. She cast her insult out there, and 30, 40 years ago, before, we had computerized gerrymandered districts, there's no way she would have been elected. There's no way. Now, she's in a very safe district. And so she insults somebody else. She insults a black woman. And I guarantee you contributions to her campaign will skyrocket.
Get stronger.
In the United States, police power is essentially unregulated.
Anybody who moves to hold police accountable faces a challenge.
The biggest problem with policing today is that most of the harm that policing causes is perfectly legal.
Up, hon. Get up.
How did we get here? The question breaks down as soon as you ask it. We may share this country, but is your America and my America the same place? Has it ever been?
Wow, that was part of the trailer for the new Netflix documentary entitled Power. The film focuses on the argument that police departments in America were originally created to protect property, not people, and that the systemic abuse brown and black Americans face at the hands of police today can be traced back to the earliest days of policing in the United States. Joining us now, the director, producer, and writer of Power, Emmy-winning and Academy Award-nominated filmmaker Yancey Ford. Thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me.
This looks powerful.
Thanks so much. It is extraordinary. It looks extraordinary. And we showed a clip earlier of someone you interviewed also talking about how crime is prevalent.
Yep.
Americans are scared in cities. And so this is so extraordinarily important. Talk about the balance, the history versus the needs today and the right type of policing.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I hope to do with Power is to, educate these communities that are dealing with crime about the origins of police. I think that folks live on a day-to-day basis what policing is now versus what we are told policing is. But the goal of Power is really to get at a 30,000-foot view of the institution and understand how the institution came to be. In communities that are struggling with violence, with crime, I think that what we find are two things. We find people who are saying we need police, but we also find people in those same communities saying we need police to serve us in a particular way, right? We need to be able to define community safety on our terms and have police partner with us in that way, as opposed to the tradition, the history of reforms of policing, which have always come from police back into communities, but never from communities outward to police.
Yancey, I think the importance of your documentary, and it's very important, is that it puts into context, I think, a lot of us that have been out there questioning policing, and I've spent a lot of my life doing that. We're not anti-police. It gives a context. But at the same time, we're also the ones that in many ways need good policing, because the high crime where it is around the country is in our community. Talk about the conflicting, the paradox we have to balance, where we want policing to protect us. I mean, I grew up, we had 4 locks on the door in Brownsville with the bar just slide across as one of the locks. But at the same time, we said, oh my God, the cops is beating up Joe down the block. Talk about that kind of a double life you have to live.
Sure. I think it's really interesting what happened to Scotty Scheffler this morning, right? Happens to people in these communities all the time. There's stop and frisk from multiple mayors in New York City, which was replicated around the country, and other forms of policing that really swept up lots of innocent people into the criminal justice system that didn't actually belong there. And I think that what communities have been saying for a long time is there's actually a distinction to be made between the folks who wreak havoc in the communities and commit crime, and the folks who need to live here because this is where they call home, and who need to be respected by communities, by police. And not in the old 90s model of community policing, right? Because that model also came from police back into communities. But what they need is for people to sit and listen to them and follow what they say is necessary to make their community safer, which isn't always only police, right? It's the structures that keep kids off the street. It's schools, jobs, education. If you go back to this, a scene in the movie where Martin Luther King Jr. asks someone in Los Angeles, what he thinks, and he says, we need jobs. He literally says, we need jobs, we'll be fine. We don't get jobs, we'll tear up Los Angeles.
Yancey, is there a city that has reformed and has moved beyond past abuses that you're inspired by, or have you seen a downward trajectory in terms of how police departments are changing within the modern era?
So there's a lot of different, projects happening. Like Camden, New Jersey, has got something underway, and we'll see over time if the reform model in Camden actually works out. There's different things happening with community organizations in Philadelphia, community organizations in Brooklyn, but I think that the larger lesson is that these small reforms on an individual department basis are not a replacement for what needs to happen on an institutional level of policing.
Have there been any, just to tag on Alicia's question, any institutional reforms that have been effective that give you hope, like body cams or something? What has worked?
So I have to tell you, Mika, right now I have a difficult time pointing to things that work. What I do in the movie is I point to an individual inspector in Minneapolis, right? Inspector Charlie Adams, who works in the 4th Precinct. This is where he grew up. A precinct that struggles with crime. And as an individual inspector, what he does is he takes his officers to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. to learn about police complicity in the Holocaust. He takes them to the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama to learn about police complicity in the lynchings that were swept the country. And he really also believes in working with communities. So he also has this men's group that he works and meets with on a monthly basis. And we see him struggling to achieve what he wants, which is a reduction in crime, while also coming up against what the system wants, which is to track kids who are committing crime into a pre-incarceration facility. And so we're left with, I think, efforts that start out well-intentioned, but that ultimately peter out and fail because they're not informed by community input.
So Yancey, the summer of 2020, after the George Floyd death, was meant to be sort of an inflection point in the relationship between communities and police. Have you seen any real changes, or are you still seeing the police just grow more and more militarized and more aggressive?
I think the changes that we've seen since the murder of George Floyd is the really transparent militarization of police, right? I think that 10 years ago in Ferguson, after the death of Michael Brown, was the first moment where folks were like, "Hey, wait, what is this? Armored vehicle on the streets of our cities? This is a protest. This is not a war." But what we've only seen in the last 4 years is that police have been more and more militaristic in their response to civil unrest. They've been more militaristic in their response to ordinary crime. And it makes you sort of ask the question, how thoroughly have our police and military become one, right? Is there a distinction that we can make any longer between the military and the police? And I think in Power, you see that there is very little distinction at this point in time between the two.
The new documentary is called Power. It's streaming now on Netflix. Director Yancey Ford, thank you very, very much for coming on the show this morning. We appreciate it. We'll be right